Hi, everybody. It's Mr. Wieland again, coming back at you with part two. Actually, I'm a little embarrassed that part one was as long as it was, but hopefully, part two will wrap up a little bit quicker. Again, part one took a look at why logical fallacy and these persuasive techniques are employed, and then we dismantled a few logical fallacies, just a handful, to give us a sense of the scope and the depth of logical fallacy. And there's lots more, but those are the ones that we see commonly, and those are the ones the media uses commonly. So I wanted to touch base with them. We're going to move now to talk about two other techniques used in advertising, and those techniques are transfer, which is uh, the actual transfer of feelings or emotions from one idea or one source to a product or to an institution that people might connect with. And the other is authority, which, as Jay Smooth mentioned, is a very powerful motivator for people. The idea of authority and the idea of, if not pleasing authority, then connecting with it in a way that benefits them. Let's start by taking a look at transfer. And again, transfer is all about the ideas of taking traits or feelings or emotions from one idea to another. And the most common form of transfer is something that we call ad populum. Again, another Latin phrase that means, in this case, to the people. And ad populum is basically the idea that products want to connect with things that are popular, things that people like, or things that people find pleasing. These are, Jay Smooth called it consistency on the crash course. The ad populum tends to be a little bit more focused. So you look at a beer ad like Corona, who is connecting to the positive feelings of being at the beach and being on vacation and being in a paradise, and assuming that their product then will also be reminiscent of those feelings and those ideas. Find Your Beach is the copy on that, and it even suggests that by drinking a Corona, you will sort of be in this pleasurable place, and frankly, it's pretty effective stuff. It looks like a pleasurable place to be, and this particular ad campaign has been around for a long time for Corona. But it also works in other ways too. Very commonly, people are very proud of the nation that they are born in. In this case, PayPal creating a credit card with an American flag on it to associate itself with the idea of being American and the positive ideas that we all share for our homeland and for the place that we come from. So by connecting America to PayPal, uh, the idea is that it somehow absorbs or transfers all the positive things about America and becomes American uh, in and of itself. And that's sort of how the transfer works. That's how ad populum works. Um, for better or for worse, the master of ad populum is Donald Trump, who has made a fortune basically connecting to this idea of wealth and this idea of fortune and using it to sell products, including steaks in this case. But he also did it with a university. He does it with golf courses and hotels, where his name in and of itself is synonymous with wealth. This is, I guess, can be considered ironic because the man has been bankrupt plenty of times, but still that concept, that popular idea of wealth and the idea that everybody wants to be wealthy, follows him along. So he can put his name on material like steaks or on hotels. People will assume that it's opulent, wealthy, and therefore beneficial. So products would want that. Another common transfer is this idea of fear, and the idea that advertising in particular kind of clings to this idea is pretty common. We see it a lot in personal, or awareness ads, service announcements, and things like that, PSAs, where the tone is a frightening one. with the idea being that people who are frightened would avoid um, certain things. In this case, it has to do with motorcycle, wearing a helmet while you are motorcycling. And, the copy says, or at least the focused copy says, I won't wear a helmet. It makes me look stupid. And of course, there's a big scar on the side of his head, and somebody's feeding him. And that makes this, an appeal to fear. You thought you'd look stupid wearing a helmet. Um, how do you look, when you're convalescing or when you're paraplegic or brain damaged or what have you? Uh, all those things can happen when you're on a motorcycle, and so the campaign to wear helmets uses fear in order to accomplish it, and hopefully transfers that fear into their cause. Another one is this idea of ethical or moral appeal, that somehow by taking action, in this case by buying Tom's shoes, you're doing something that benefits the world, and that makes people feel really good to benefit the world and to help other people. And in this case, it sort of again uses ad populum to connect to this idea of charity and morality. I vote, I give blood, and it's probably a Tom shoe. And obviously, voting and giving blood are things that are universally considered popular. And when you're dealing with ad populum, these things, we are dealing with some things that are universally considered popular. I forgot to mention that, but when you're dealing with that, we see how those things function as a ethical or moral appeal. And this is probably a good time to talk about too that ads, just like this one, will oftentimes blend or borrow more than one or use more than one technique in order to convince people to take action. And this ad certainly does. Our favorite figurative language device, hyperbole, also finds its way into advertisements. In fact, it becomes one of the more enjoyable perspectives when we look at advertisements and print ads and on television and things like that. But hyperbole certainly is a logical fallacy. It brings in these emotions of excitement and power and hit and irony and all those things, but it works to transfer the idea that something is super powered. For example, a Slim Fast that works so well you fall through the grates of a sewer, or nail polish that makes your nails so strong you can cut tin with it. The Tabasco ad is a clever one too. It turns your turns your ear of corn into popcorn because it's so hot. Glittering generalities, and now we're really focusing on copy. We're really focused on the words inside advertisements, and to be honest, advertisements use a lot of words that have very little meaning. Glittering generalities are words that are generally considered positive or pleasurable, but there's no real evidence to suggest that these words are associated with the product or sometimes really have any meaning. A lot of times they're even sort of made up. Um, you see the presidential advertisement in the corner there, hope, action, change. These are positive words. These are generalities. There's no proof that anywhere on that advertisement that those things are going to be a part of that campaign, but they want to be associated with it, so they use them. Same with the burger, big, beefy, bliss, right? These are words that there's no real proof of. In fact, most of those burgers look like buns. They don't look like beef. That being said, those generalities glitter, ad companies use them, and so you get a lot of, I don't call them nonsense words, but you get a lot of words that are just colorful, that are fascinating or interesting, but they don't really have a strong connection to the product or a real meaning in the terms of the product. Lots of wordplay in advertisements. Again, some of the fun that comes from it. But the most common is irony and equivocation. And it doesn't just come from the copy. It can also come from the images. People like ironic images and those things. And again, irony, as you guys learned in the 9th grade, hopefully in the 8th grade, is when your expectations are a little bit shifted by the process. And the copy here suggests that there's some irony or equivocation, or words that are used that have two meanings. Mrs. has such a nice ring to it. Obviously, ring being used as well, it sounds nice, but it also is, of course, the diamond wedding ring that this advertisement is trying to sell. If you're paying close attention and you see the subcopy down there for a definite yes, you'll probably also notice that this ad functions as well as a faulty cause. Perhaps it would take more than just a diamond ring to make somebody say yes, but the ad doesn't want you to think about that. It just wants you to buy the ring. So, a false cause as well. But using ring with two meanings is certainly irony and equivocation. The other section of advertisements that sort of or advertising techniques that work is this concept of authority, and authority works on a part of persuasion that we know is ethos or ethos, which work to build the credibility of the persuader themselves, him or herself. How the authority of the speaker is created, and so these particular advertisements and this particular technique plays with our sense of authority and our sense of ethos because it changes the way we examine the product and who is delivering the message to us. The most common is this concept of endorsement, where you have famous people or scientific people or people who should be listened to endorsing a product. Michael Jordan, who was a basketball player, probably knew very little about batteries, but he putting his face on an advertisement was a surefire way to sell things. And Michael Jordan, for a long time in the 90s and in the 2000s, was the uh, hottest endorsement you could get. Anything that his face was on sold. So, you know, not just basketball and sports, but also batteries. And that's how you got it. Obviously, Taylor Swift's love for Diet Coke has been well documented, and in this case, she's being used to endorse it. It's almost a testimonial she's giving there, and we'll talk about testimonials in a second. But of course, they're very famous. The smoking ads, the cigarette ads, where doctors recommend smoking cigarettes in the 30s and the 40s, can be seen everywhere, and we know that cigarettes are bad for us. Doctors probably knew then, but the idea of um, doctors endorsing cigarettes is healthful. Worked to sell cigarettes for a long time in this country. So we take a look at that and suggest that it's, again, fallacious because just because Michael Jordan, Taylor Swift, and a doctor agree doesn't really make it a great product. Another idea is that sometimes products or organizations try to associate themselves with plain folks, ordinary, everyday people, and they take those ordinary, everyday qualities and want them to be associated with their product. Dove, who had some marketing problems here in the last 15 years, brought this idea, this real beauty campaign out that all body shapes and all body types and all colors of skin are beautiful, and so they really worked to make sure that Dove was a common product, a product that was for everybody and was kind of celebrated the ordinary and everyday. Um, you know, Organizations such as the Red Cross also do this because they know that they support themselves with helping people who are just ordinary and typical, or would consider themselves ordinary and typical. So these companies seek out plain folks um, appeals to make those connections. And if plain folks work, then certainly snob appeal does too. When you take a product and you amplify it, again, as we talked about Donald Trump and his association with wealth, we can also talk about the idea that products want themselves to seem um, very highfalutin, very exclusive. All these things that are might be considered snobbish. Beware of a cheaper cup of coffee. Yeah, it's worth spending the money on a Starbucks because you're going to get a better cup of coffee just because it's more expensive. It's for the elite. Cat food has been after this market for a long time, trying to sell pate and other designer meats to cats and fragrances and jewelry, and oftentimes are, portray people behaving like rich people, or behaving, that they're in the highest of classes, because they want their products associated with that. Now, that's not to say that all products are associated with it. Obviously, the diamond ring that we saw did not use snob appeal just because it was a diamond ring. The snob appeal comes from the ad themselves, when people are behaving like snobs, or acting like snobs, or just, maybe even appearing like snobs. So beware that not all, you know luxury products are use snob appeal to sell them. Sex appeal is a huge one, and using sex appeal by using beautiful people, by putting them in suggestive positions, and making suggestions of sex, have sold for very, very, very long time. These ads are from the 90s, and they're so blatantly sex appeal that it's hard to miss. In fact, uh, one of them even has the word sex written right in it. And so when you see it, it's sometimes surprising, but uh, the idea that sexist, long sold things in this country is true. And of course, that this appeal works as well. And then finally, testimonial. And again, a testimonial is a lot like endorsement. In fact, they're very similar. The difference is testimonial actually shows the people using the product, or suggests that the people actually use the product. Michael Jordan might never put batteries in anything that he owns, but this guy definitely looks like he's a farmer treating weeds. And um, uh, the student from this college actually looks like. Um, she attends. So you have these testimonials where the people inside the ads say, hey, I use it and therefore it must be good. And that gives it all a sense of authority. And that's really what all these things are talking about. The idea that whether you're a snob or a plain folk, you're going to be listened to because of the certain qualities that those are. We take advice from our neighbors. We all want to be a supermodel, living the high life in a beautiful place. Those things can both be used against us to get us to join, to connect, or to, in this case, buy. Even sex appeal works that way, where all of us have a deep need to be attractive and to be considered beautiful. So we all work to that, and those advertisements come in and certainly work in our favor. That's why we have to be sort of paying attention to these things. Like I said, these are all good examples of techniques and fallacies that are used to sell us things. There are plenty more. I'm sure they'll pop up if we get a chance to look at it. Go ahead, make sure you've tracked all these down, put them in your list, and we're gonna start to really look at some ads here from time to time and get some writing done about them. And that's really what we're after here with these pieces. So make sure that you go through these lists. And get your definitions written down, and we will be using these to analyze ads and media from here on forward. Thanks.